Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Shayna.
And I'm Cicely.
And on today's episode, we are going to talk about something that is very near and dear to my life and my story, and also recently Cicely's, and that is PCOS.
Yep. For those of you that don't know what PCOS is, it basically is an imbalance of hormones, and it's a condition when you have way too high of androgen levels, which is the male sex hormone. And that's kind of the first thing that you might get diagnosed with PCOS if they are like starting to see those higher androgen levels. But I'll let Shayna kind of start on just when she found out she had PCOS and kind of how that started to change things for her.
Yes. So PCOS stands for Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. And the first thing you hear about it, or every time I tell someone I have it, you have to explain it a lot because you think immediately cysts on ovaries. And I went into the doctor to my OBGYN when I was a sophomore. No, I was a sophomore in high school because I was having irregular periods. And my general doctor was super worried about this, didn't know what it was. And so, pretty much because of these irregular periods, my sophomore year, my OBGYN diagnosed me with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And she assumed that I had cysts on my ovaries as well as some other side effects. But when I went in to do an ultrasound, I didn't have cysts on my ovaries. And I realized that there's a whole nother aspect of polycystic ovarian syndrome rather than just these cysts. And it's pretty much an overarching term for an imbalance of hormones. So, what kind of also prompted me to go into my OBGYN, not just with my irregular periods, but with the slight acne that I was having. And it never really became a huge issue for me with all of the side effects that come with PCOS until I got into my freshman year of college. But because of those irregular periods in high school, my OBGYN put me on birth control. And so that's kind of where my story started as a 16-year-old in high school with irregular periods, just newly being diagnosed with PCOS. I had no idea what that meant. My doctors pretty much told me there in that moment, you will be on birth control for the rest of your life and you're going to have difficulty having children. That's
Yeah.
what I was left with at 16 years old.
Yep. Um, Kind of similar story, but also opposite for me. I have always had irregular periods, didn't even actually get my period until I was 16, I think. And my doctors were like not concerned at all about it. And they would like ask me like, oh, like all these questions about like my parents, like my mom and like my aunts, like history and like, did they get their periods like whatever? And I'd always be like, no, like they got it really young. They were always consistent, whatever. And my doctors would be like, oh, okay. And like that would be the end of that. And they were always like, yeah, like I'm sure it's fine. Like you're still young, like it's fine. And then working with my stomach doctor, who's a functional medicine doctor, I think last summer was like bringing this up to him of just kind of like, hey, I still have really irregular periods and like I just think that something hormonally isn't working and something is off. And he was like, yeah, being almost 21 years old, like you definitely we should be looking into this and like I'm more concerned about it. And so he's the one that had me first start looking at it and with his help and then combined with going to an OB just to get the ultrasound because I knew that she was going to tell me the same thing that Shayna's doctor told her.
Yep.
And she did. She was like, here are your options. You can go on birth control. And if you don't, you most likely will be infertile and you will have this issue and you could have this issue too. And I was like, great. Can you just give me the ultrasound? Like, I'll go cry in the car on the way home from this appointment. Thank you so much. And yeah, so I did an ultrasound and stuff, and I'll go into that more later. But that was kind of more recently the first time that my doctor even was kind of like, okay, maybe you do have PCOS.
Mhm. So PCOS affects 10 to 15% of the female population. However, 90% of PCOS patients go undiagnosed. So it's a huge number of women who are diagnosed. However, in society, I don't know why, if it must be our doctors, but we're so conditioned to think that you like it's common to not have regular periods.
Yeah.
However, it's not normal. Our
Hmm.
bodies, just like the way that our heart beats and we breathe, we need to be having a cycle every 28 to 32 days. That
Yeah.
is how our body works. And PCOS is actually the top cause of infertility among women. And kind of like I touched on earlier, a really big misconception when you think of polycystic ovarian syndrome is the cysts.
Hmm.
Um, but it's actually not the thing. And it's super common for anyone, even if someone doesn't have PCOS, to get cysts on their ovaries during ovulation. It's a super common thing, but that doesn't mean that you have PCOS. So I personally think they should change the name to just be like hormone imbalance because
Hmm.
I think polycystic ovarian syndrome is a little bit confusing. Um, and so I can kind of go into when it PCOS became like a bigger deal almost in my life because being diagnosed at 16, whatever, then I was on the pill and that really masked all the symptoms for me. And I didn't think twice about it. However, when I kind of, if you guys listen to my story, I talk much more in detail about it in our third episode.
Hmm.
But I got off of the pill senior year of high school and I didn't have a period for 19 months because I knew that as a woman, your body should be able to handle this on my own. And I wanted to try to figure it out. So then,
That line right there is so true. I think so many people can relate to that. Like that's how I was too. I was like, it's gonna figure itself out. Like it's gonna be great. Like my body is supposed to work in these ways and it can do it. I think
and I,
everyone agrees with that.
and there's something I think about our generation that we are just so much more those type of people rather than like
Yeah.
our parents' generation. They're like, okay, I'll listen to the doctors, I'll do what you tell me. But for some reason, the way we were raised and conditioned to be on earth, we're like,
Yeah.
no, I can, like, my body can figure this out and I'm willing to put in the work to figure it out.
Yeah.
So PCOS really became a bigger issue for me my freshman year of college when I had the most horrific acne that you'd ever seen, massive cysts on my face. I gained 20 pounds. I was losing chunks of my hair. I was tired all of the time, felt super lethargic, especially in the afternoons. I wanted to take a nap and felt like I needed to take a nap almost every day. I had brain fog and I was constantly bloated no matter what I was eating. And I had seen a TikTok of this girl being like, I have PCOS, here are all my symptoms.
Hmm.
And I had never connected these symptoms to my PCOS. I thought this is just the way that my life is. This is just the way that I feel, and everyone feels this way. But when
Yeah.
you start to really listen to your body and research other ways of what is causing this, I had the most aha moment of my life. And I called my mom and I was on the phone telling her everything I learned. And I was like, I am going to change my life. I am going
Yeah.
to figure out how to reverse these PCOS symptoms. So that was a really big thing for me. Right about going into my sophomore year of college, I was like, I'm going to make a change.
Yeah. Well, and I think kind of what you said with like, you don't realize it's what we talk about all the time of like, you don't realize it's not normal until you see someone else that's saying like, they didn't realize that too and they changed it. Like, you are feeling all of this, or even periods being irregular. You're like, okay, like, I know like two of my friends that have irregular periods too. Like, it's fine and it's not, but you don't know any different. And so you're just kind of like, oh, like brain fog, like yeah, that's happening to everyone at our age, or just like I'm overworking it or like something like that. But no, like our body is supposed to function normally if we're giving it everything it needs.
And I was in such this confusing state because
Hmm.
I definitely didn't eat as clean as I do now, but I was eating well. I was working out multiple times a week, what
Yeah.
I thought was good workouts, running and a little bit of weight training, mostly cardio. I thought I
Yeah.
was eating well. And I was doing what everyone else was doing in the gym, and I couldn't lose the weight. I
Hmm.
couldn't do it. And I was so confused. Like, why is it not working? And it was the most frustrating thing ever. And a really big indicator that came along with this PCOS was insulin resistance. And I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
Um, my doctor being like, once I ran those blood works, you're pre-diabetic. And I was
Yeah.
like, what? Like I eat great. I'm
Right.
working out. What do you mean I'm pre-diabetic? And so something that I learned recently was all PCOS patients have insulin resistance.
Hmm.
They are one and the same. And so we have also mentioned in our previous episodes what insulin resistance is, but it's pretty much the you have like a key and a lock, and that lock is jammed, and the insulin is not being able to release into a usable form. So it's just building up and it's stocking. And that's why we feel bloated all the time and we can't lose the weight. So that's insulin resistance, and all PCOS patients have it,
Yeah.
um, which I
That was
found
one of
super.
the first things that my doctor like saw that I had just from other things. I think, like you said, we touched on it in other episodes, and that my doctor realized that I was insulin resistant. And that was kind of one of the first things that he was like, oh, maybe this is pointing towards PCOS for you. Like that would connect things from your stomach and your hormones like being off.
Yes. So that was a big deal. And with PCOS, insulin resistance can usually be reversed through lifestyle. But something really cool that found was you can actually diagnose yourself with PCOS pretty much without having to run blood work.
Yeah.
If you meet two of the three criteria, you have like you're 90% going to have PCOS. And this is what my doctor told me. So the three criteria are a history of irregular periods, PCOS looking ovaries, and symptoms of high testosterone. So, irregular periods. If you're not having a period every 28 to 32 days, that's criteria one.
Hmm.
Second can be seen through an ultrasound. So, you would have to go to the doctor for this, but it's PCOS looking ovaries. And your doctor can tell you what this is, but it's lots of follicles, abnormal amount of follicles on the ovaries, as well as the ovaries being larger in size. So that's what PCOS looking ovaries are. And then the third criteria are symptoms of high testosterone. Like Cicely mentioned, with those high androgen levels, you're much more sensitive to these changes in androgens like acne, weight gain, hair loss. These are all symptoms of high testosterone and androgen levels. So if you have two of those three criteria, you pretty much have PCOS.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Um, it's also super common with PCOS to have mood disorders, anxiety and depression, weight gain, and you are much more at risk for an eating disorder, which is super scary that the people who experience this, it's something biologically wrong with their body. They
Hmm.
already, their brain, they're not getting the right neuroepinephrines and chemicals in their brain. So they are more depressed, they have anxiety. And then on top of that, they have insulin resistance and they can't lose the weight and they're gaining weight super easy. So it can be a really scary thing to have if you don't go to a doctor and try to fix it right away. And then the doctors just want to shove antidepressants down your throats, but we can really get to the root cause of trying to fix a lot of these things through lifestyle changes.
Yeah, like you said, like they're all tied together and they're all woven and one is within the other one. And a lot of them can be solved all the same way. And I think one of the other common like misleading things about PCOS and one that like even my functional medicine doctor like was like so confused with me was like a lot of PCOS patients are overweight because they do gain weight and so they have that weight gain. And so for me, he was always like, I don't really understand because you are so skinny and like your body mass index is great and it's never been an issue before. And that is a lot of PCOS patients are way overweight. And I don't know if it's necessarily that PCOS then is caused from that or vice versa. I'm sure they're kind of tied together, but I remember that he was like, okay, like that is one that you don't necessarily meet, but then I met the criteria of the irregular periods, I have a lot of follicles on my ovaries, which I got from an ultrasound, but it wasn't like the doctor was kind of like, like it looks normal enough, like it's fine.
Mm.
But again, we've talked about what normal enough like actually means to a doctor compared to like just other patients they see pretty much. And then I've always had high testosterone levels and high androgen levels.
Yes. So there you go. Meet the criteria. But it's super challenging. And when I went to my general doctor and OBGYN, it was pretty much like, your life is doomed. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. You're
Hmm.
screwed. Go get on the pill. And I didn't know where to go from there. They weren't giving me any answers. They weren't trying to help me at all. And so I had to start doing my own research and I had to start looking more into it. And it was not easy to find.
Yeah.
In this day and age, I'm so grateful for the Instagram and TikTok, and I fact checked everything. And I
Hmm.
went to see a functional medicine doctor to see if I really could get rid of these symptoms. And I was like astonished and in awe to know that PCOS symptoms could be minimized and they could go away. So most people can actually solve and reverse their PCOS symptoms through lifestyle changes, which is just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And it made me super happy and completely gave me this new sense of hope that through a little hard work, changing my exercise, taking some supplements, and changing the way that I eat, I could minimize all of these symptoms that I have and go back to living like the most happy life. Because a well rounded person, when you're healthy, you're for the most part happy. And
Yeah.
taking these changes completely shifted my mindset. I look at life so much differently. I'm so much more joyful just from these little kind of lifestyle changes. So the biggest one for me was a healthy, well balanced diet. And we've talked about this as well, but really, first step is kind of reversing that insulin resistance. So
Yeah.
limiting the amount of carbs, especially complex carbs like the
Hmm.
gluten, the bread, or the gluten, the rice, starchy potatoes, as well watching the sugar levels. So I try to get rid of all processed sugars, only stick to natural sugars like honey and coconut sugar, as well as if I'm going to eat fruit by itself, like an apple, I'm going to add some almond butter. If I'm going to
Yeah.
have a banana, I'm going to put peanut butter so that the protein is able to mask that sugar spike. And then a really big thing to limit, what's it called? Um, Inflammation in the body is getting rid of processed seed oils. They are like the
Hmm.
worst things in this world because of the way that they are created and highly heated and then added chemicals. So getting rid of processed seed oils, which was probably the most difficult because they are in every single
Literally everything.
packaged food item in the
Yep.
grocery store, as well as every single pretty much restaurant.
Yeah.
Any restaurant cooks with seed oils. So I'd say in a healthy diet, focus on those three main areas. And for me, the hardest one was definitely the processed seed oils.
Hmm. Yeah, the protein over the carb levels in every meal, every snack, it changes the game, and it's so important. The next one is exercise is a really great way to start solving some of these symptoms, and that's been one of the biggest ones for me is changing from I used to do so much cardio, which is still good for you. Like it's still working out, but it spikes your cortisol levels. And so then you're spiking the stress hormone and your hormones are already all over the place. So you want to like keep all the hormones as consistent as you can. And your cortisol and stress hormone is super important. And so it's a lot better for me to be, and for PCOS people to be working out by doing things that keep their heart rate more level.
Mhm.
So not doing cardio or like different interval trainings, but instead doing weightlifting or yoga, things that are still working your body, still getting a good workout in, but more relaxing, going for walks, things like that. And I was even telling my mom the other day, I was like, it's so like she gave me a compliment recently and she was like, Cicely, like you look so fit, like compared to like in the past. And I was like, that's so crazy because I haven't even been working out in my mind like that strenuously like lately. But I was like, it's so crazy when you start working out the way that your body needs you to work out
Mhm.
and the way that you need to eat, like the changes you
Yes.
start seeing in your body. Like even I did yoga the other day and afterwards I felt so good. And I was like, it's just so crazy because I haven't felt this good when working out in so long, but it's because I'm working out the way that my body is actually able to receive it.
Exactly. And that's where you're going to get the benefits. And
Hmm.
we all see on Instagram cycle syncing,
Yep.
and it's awesome. If you have a regular period, like you all should, you should totally be cycle syncing. And
Yeah.
like Cicely said, your body's going to receive it so much more if that's what it needs. So depending on
Hmm.
the four phases, and we'll go into a whole nother episode about this, but depending on the four phases in your cycle, there's different exercises that you should be doing. And
Yeah.
taking a walk on a day where you don't feel good and you are about to get your period and you have cramps is okay. Get
Hmm.
outside and go for a walk. So exercise is another great way to solve those PCOS symptoms. And the biggest thing for me also was lowering my insulin. And how to do that, a big one is supplements and watch when you're eating and how you're eating it. So, are you eating when you get up or are you skipping breakfast, which I would totally advise against? I not that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but eating a meal within 30 minutes to an hour of waking up really helps with those cortisol as well as
Yeah.
insulin spiking and how you're eating. Are you adding protein, decreasing your carbs, and then also not eating right before you go to bed? So Cicely is
Hmm.
really good about this. And if it is 8 p.m., Cicely is not eating a single thing in her body. I need to get better at this, but you're not snacking. You're not eating
Yeah.
dessert. You're not grabbing to the pantry because your body needs to start shutting down and it needs to start doing those processes while it's sleeping. And if it's trying to digest your food, it's not resting and it's not in a
Hmm.
restful state. And then you go right back to messing up and getting wacky cortisol levels. So, what really, in order to lower that insulin, take supplements that your doctor recommends and watch when and how you're eating it. Um, Another big thing are those hormone disruptors.
Yeah.
And it's become much more of a new thing that we're hearing hormone disruptors, hormone disruptors. What
Hmm.
does that mean? And we would love to go into a full episode, a full debrief about it. But the biggest thing that I've been focusing on are the levels of plastic because these microplastics get into our food and then we eat them and they are full of chemicals. They scratch our insides and completely our body doesn't know there's this internal awful thing that it's not used to. And so that
Yeah.
whacks up your hormones as well.
We consume like I think it's around 1,000 microplastics like a week based on just the things that we have around us. And you start going down like a spiral when you start looking into this because you're like literally everything around us is quote unquote toxic or a hormone disruptor in some way. And it's insane. It was one of, I think back in January on a call I had with my doctor, he was like, okay, like your body's obviously trying to get there. Like your cycle's kind of getting there. Like it's obvious that it's doing something, but it's still not quite there. And he had just gotten back from like this webinar, like training that he had done. And he said that the number one thing that they said for PCOS patients was to have them do an audit of their plastics and toxins in their life. And so he was like, plastics, like just start by getting different glassware instead of plastic containers. Change out your pans to stainless steel so that they don't have like the non-stick parts like coming off. Changing your like utensils that you cook with. Like simple changes that you can slowly start like phasing out.
Yes. And this is actually a big concern for men as well. And I am not up
Mhm.
to speed on my men biology, so bear with me. But I was just reading an article, and men are in all of history also have the lowest fertility. So the highest infertility rates now than in our history. And they did a study about wherever the male sperm is held, and they found the microplastic in there. Hundreds of these microplastic particles
Jeez.
in the men's, where they have their sperm. And so it's crazy that it's not just affecting women, but men
Yeah.
need to be aware of it too, because it's a two-way street if you want to have kids. And it's affecting everyone. And so, especially in children, if you can really just limit the amount of plastics
Mhm.
that we are surrounded by, it's just going to suit and help you so much better later on in life. It's scary.
Well, and I even think back to all the things that I used as a kid. Every, like, you give a kid, even babysitting now, every kid, their cups are plastic, their plates are plastic, and you see all like the scratch marks on the plates, and the cups are like chipping on the corners. Like, I think about like how we grew up on that stuff, and it
And then you
makes sense that now we're having
go,
like fertility different issues, and like so many people have different issues related to that because we grew up ingesting all this plastic in like prime growth years when that's like so important.
I cringe and it makes me so sad and so scared for our generation and everyone around
Our
us. I'm like,
children.
guys, please be careful. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
limit. And I
Yeah.
understand plastic plates are easy if you're having a lot of people over, but
Mm-hmm.
just be aware of it and limit it. And it is so scary. And you just want yourself and your kids or your grandkids, your nieces and nephews to be the healthiest they can. And by making these little changes, you're going to have a drastic impact. Why do you think kids have ADHD and
Yeah.
disorders, OCD, and cancer rates are through the roof? It is the food we are consuming. It is the
Mm-hmm.
chemicals that they put in and spray with pesticides. It is the processed seed oils. It is,
It's all
it's
the
just
toxins around us.
something that everyone needs to be aware of. And I'm so happy that we started this podcast. And this is why we are doing it. And
Yeah.
our listeners, you can learn with us. We
Yeah.
learn every single day. We are researching because we want to be our healthiest versions and we are continuing to refine our lives. And so we're just so grateful that you guys are listening. And that's why we started this podcast. So we are here to
Yeah.
learn with you guys and to make changes.
Yeah. PCOS is one we didn't have to do a ton of research on because we both know it so well and our doctors tell us a lot about it and stuff. But it has been cool to do research on a lot of these different topics. And like Shayna said, just keep finding out even more so that we can share it with you guys and also so that we have it for ourselves. And there's information overload, honestly, on the internet now and with the social media apps. And it can be really hard too because you're getting bombarded with multiple different sources of information, which is why we always say like everyone should still try to visit a doctor, do their own research, like figure it out by yourself. But PCOS is one especially that you can really start to tell if you have it just on your own because those signs are glaring and like they're very obvious to you.
Yes, it's not normal to have those symptoms. And if you are someone who has those symptoms, go to a doctor, make these
Hmm.
changes because you should feel better. You should not have to dread another day because of the way you're going to feel after you eat a meal or the acne on your face or being tired when 3 p.m. hits. There are
Yeah.
changes that you can make. And so these symptoms will go away. And again, just to reiterate, we are not doctors. We did not go to school for this.
Hmm.
But this is stuff that we have researched through good scientific articles. We have experienced this. We have gone to see our doctors. So we are
Yeah.
just here to share that information with you guys and try to limit the amount of people who are facing symptoms of polycystic ovarian syndrome and things like
Hmm.
that. So thanks for
And if you guys have
listening.
any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can DM us on Instagram at continuously refined. You can text us, message us privately on our Instagrams, whatever. We're happy to talk more about this and about anything related to our hormones at any point.
Yep, that's us. So thanks so much for listening. And we can't wait to continue to continuously refine our lives together. Bye.
Bye.